You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Hi everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. This is the podcast that shares and inspires unconventional career journeys. Please help the podcast grow by telling your friends all about it and leave us a nice review and rating on iTunes, Castro, and all the other podcast players that you use. I would highly appreciate it. Now, today's podcast interview is with Miguel Fernando. He is the founder of Moment Financial, and Miguel and I actually met because he turned out to be a listener of the podcast, and after seeing my OMD Ventures sticker on my laptop, he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I listened to your podcast." And that's how our friendship blossomed. And now he is coming on as a guest, which is pretty awesome. So if you're a listener, don't be shy. If you ever see me, come say hi. Maybe you'll come on the podcast in the future. So Miguel's company, Moment Financial, is a FinTech company based out in Toronto that he started just about maybe like 6 months ago when he started having the idea. And it's an app that is designed to help people in all manners of personal finance to really help you feel financially free. So I recommend you check it out at momentfinancial.com if you're interested after our interview. Miguel started his career as an economic researcher at RBC, and he moved over to international wealth management with a focus on Central and Latin America. He made the pivot to work in a product role and become a product manager after realizing he enjoyed building internal tools and solutions while working for the bank, and made the leap into join a fintech company while teaching himself product management, coding, and all that related technical knowledge through bootcamps and online courses. He went on to build the advisory solutions product for Purpose Investments, which some of you may know, they are a pretty big ETF company. And he built the solution for Purpose Advisory Solutions business and made another leap into entrepreneurship, where now he is a full-time bootstrapped entrepreneur. It was something really he said he felt like he had to do, and it's something we also talk about deeper in the interview where I could relate, where there's this kind of weird gut instinct that it's sometimes hard to explain to people unless they've kind of gone through it themselves. Hopefully we try to dissect that a little bit. But in our chat, we talk a lot about the early years of entrepreneurship, like mainly, like I'd say, like the first year or so of it. What it was like making this decision for Miguel, what it was like making the decision for myself, what gap he saw in the market when he was making the decision, and much more about the ins and outs, the dailies, and even a bit about the industry itself in the wealth management space. And so without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Miguel. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Today on the podcast, we have Miguel Fernando. Hey Miguel, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Miguel here is the founder at Moment Financial and my friend at WeWork Labs.
Yeah.
I think that's how we first met. We were just working out at WeWork, and then we ended up getting to know each other, and I practically see you every day.
Yeah, actually, well, I think the first time that we met was because I saw your logo on your laptop.
Right.
And I had recently listened to your podcast with the lab's manager, Tom. So I recognized it, and then I asked you. I said, "Oh, are you Daniel? Like you did the podcast with Tom?" And you're like, "Yeah." So I had already listened to the podcast before meeting you.
Yeah. It's one of those cases where for me it was like, "Oh wow, actually having my logo stickered on my laptop actually works. It does some kind of marketing."
Yeah. No, I never really thought about that for myself, but I should probably get one printed up.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of nice swag things where I was like, what can I do for a really cheap cost? And I went to Vistaprint and I bought stickers for I think $3 or something, and you get a pack of 12.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just got one, stuck it on, and have 11 that are unused at the moment.
I'll have to go do that after we're done this.
And so Miguel, you're the founder of Moment Financial, and so for people who may not be familiar with what Moment Financial is, can you kind of give an overview of what your company is, what you do?
Sure. So we're a budgeting and financial planning application. Our goal is to guide your financial life so that you can make confident decisions with your money. And it kind of came from, my history in being in the wealth management industry for most of my life. The first part in investment advice and just general investment research. And then I moved over to more technology focused side of wealth management. And, it just took a lot of years of seeing how suboptimal the different approaches are out there that exist today. And a lot of frustration with what's out there, and just wanting to go off my own and start something that can give as much value as possible to the end consumer without the biases that are existing in the industry today.
And right now it's I know your website is momentfinancial.com, so
Yep.
people can go check it out. But the actual product itself is it an app form?
Yeah, it's an app form. So we actually use a progressive web application framework to make the app. So it's not a native application, but you'll be able to add it to your home screen. We did that just because we kind of went through a couple different iterations early on, and there were some different reasons why we wanted to make it some like a hybrid application that you could use on both mobile and on desktop. Now we focus more on mobile, but it still made sense to just keep going with the same framework and doing it as a progressive web app.
And you mentioned how the early part of your career was spent in finance, and I think we ended up kind of connecting on that as well, because we both were in the asset management, wealth management space in our careers. I think, but when you started in university, you studied at Carleton, and you studied international business there.
Yeah, that's right.
Why specifically international business?
Yeah, I think I remember back in high school, we had this one day that was, I went to high school in Ottawa, and then they had one of these days where they brought in the high school kids and showed them a whole bunch of different programs. And I just happened to go into this one presentation, and they had someone on stage who was telling about their experience. They did international business. They concentrated in finance. They were working for, I think, Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, which was interesting to me at the time. And part of that program was, one, you had to learn another language, and the second was that you do 1 year abroad. So for me, living in just outside of Ottawa my whole life, it was really attractive to go and actually study in another country. So right then I said, okay, you know what, this program looks good. I'm gonna try to go for this.
Did you grow up in Ottawa, born and raised?
Yeah. I grew up born and raised west end of Ottawa.
Okay, and was this kind of idea of travel like always something that you wanted to have in your life, or were you want to just leave home kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it was get out of Ottawa partially. Growing up with a name like Miguel Fernando, everybody expects you to speak Spanish. So that was part of the program, was that I actually learned Spanish for the first time. My dad's actually from the Philippines, and my mom's French Canadian, so there's no Spanish in there.
Oh,
but everybody always expected me to speak Spanish, so I kind of went off the first couple of years of university and started to learn Spanish, and then went to Spain, lived in Madrid for the year.
Oh wow, how was Madrid?
It was amazing. I think most of the time when I talk to people about going to Spain, or they're going to go travel, I say, Barcelona, if you're going to go to one place, is probably the place to go. There's such a good diversity of things to do, and great architecture and everything there. But and you can get by in English pretty easily in Barcelona, more or less. Madrid is a more it's a really lively city when you live there, and where you know where you're going, you know people. But maybe as like a first timer, it might not be the top choice, but still lots of stuff to do. It's cool city.
Yeah, because I think I might have told you I was thinking of going to Madrid sometime in like March, April. I don't know at the moment anymore, but it's still a place I'm more interested in going to Madrid than Barcelona. Like Barcelona just seems so touristy, and Madrid seems more like a city with industries, etc. Like, not saying Barcelona isn't, but I feel like Madrid might be closer to what Toronto is, what like London is, kind of thing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, and I think it's more, you get more of an idea of what that culture is like.
Like what people in Spain actually are like, maybe, and kind of more of the culture instead of tourist focused culture. Yeah.
So it's still it still takes a little while to kind of find your bearings, I think, when you're in Madrid, because part of the experience of living there is really getting into the culture as much as you can. Going out with friends. Like, a big thing there is most people have really, like a lot of Europe, they have smaller apartments, and then people generally go and meet outside. They'll go to the bars, they'll go to the cafes to meet and hang out with their friends. So, it's a place where you want to go. You want to go with friends. You want to meet people. You want to kind of like open up your network as much as you can while you're there.
Are people very open to outsiders?
Not my experience is no, not really. I think
that's the stereotype I've heard about Europeans in general.
Yeah, so I don't know about Europeans in general. I think like you can see that about, especially in big cities compared to small cities. Same thing with Paris compared to going to a smaller city in France. Madrid, it's one of these proud countries, proud of their language. What I found is that when you go there, even if someone did speak English or they could speak English, they wouldn't. They would speak Spanish full on, very quick, and if you don't understand, they didn't really care.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
But it's a beautiful city. It was a lot of fun, like a great nightlife at the time. You know, it was early 20s when I was there. So overall, it was really good. But it's also been a long time since I've been there. So.
Mm-hmm. And when you graduated, you started your career at RBC. You were a research associate in the economics department.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the first jobs, I had an earlier job before that where it was kind of a back office job. And then I moved over into research for economics at RBC, where I worked with the chief economist, associate or assistant chief economists. And it was a lot of just kind of research, putting together decks for them, and general research on economics. But it really kind of gave me a more practical side of the of economics, which I didn't do. You know, you don't get too much of that from school. You get more of the theoretical, but it was nice to really kind of get into the practical side of things.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, you moved on to Dominion Securities of RBC, which is more like the wealth management side. Was that a purposeful thing where you wanted to get closer to the actual asset management component of the business, or like how did that turn out? Like how did it come about? Yeah,
I think, well, part of that was the advisor that I worked with. The branch that I was in was called the International Advisory Group. So all of the clients, and the majority of the clients came from South America, Central America. So there's a lot of Spanish-speaking clients. So that was part of the reason why I kind of went in that direction. It was interesting. I actually was choosing between two places to go stay more on the capital markets side, and there was an opportunity in London. And I'd already started dating my now wife, so I decided to stay here and take this job. And it was kind of like a fork in the road where I went this direction to go more into wealth management, and then also something that I could use, you know, the Spanish that I'd done in university.
It seems like this continuous international connection has always been there in like your careers, like since from school, like you've constantly tried to like build that kind of part into, I guess, what you did at work.
Yeah. I think it was always interesting, especially coming from that program in university. It was always interesting to either go back and live abroad or to have a job where you could go and travel more. So it played in for sure, but I definitely wanted to be in the wealth management space at the time.
Yeah. And from there you moved on to, how do you pronounce it? Croesus?
Croesus.
Croesus.
Yeah, so that was actually, I think a big turning point was between those two, because that international advisory group for RBC, they had done a strategic change where they decided that they had, I think, exposure to over 160 countries or something like that. And they were doing some cost cutting in wealth management. So they wanted to bring that exposure down to a list of maybe 20 or 30 countries. So a lot of these clients that were being serviced out of this branch were in these countries that they were trying to cut out for compliance reasons and cost-cutting reasons. So they actually closed down our entire branch. They told all the advisors that were there to go somewhere else. They let them keep their book. They weren't going to go against them for any non-compete of any business, most of which are clients that they didn't want anyway. But they closed down that entire branch, and it gave me the opportunity to kind of transition in my career. And at that point, I had always been interested in building these small solutions within all these other jobs, just to improve processes. And I was very frustrated when there was a lot of manual processes in whatever we were doing. And I kind of always had some technical background, but it was very limited. So I spent a lot of time in those jobs, and the stuff I really liked was building these solutions.
Can you give me an example of like the solution?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff in RBC economics was around building decks and charts and everything for research. That's like half of what you do in research is kind of like grinding away at these charts and presentations for the more senior people. So we did, I built this toolbar just to help standardize the way that all the charts looked, and to generate them, much quicker. At the job at RBC Dominion Securities, and built a tool for the advisor to be able to run the quarterly review cycle with their clients. So the way that she looks at her book of business and the way that she does asset allocation across different geographies or the sector allocation for fixed income and the fixed income side of the portfolio, it's just different from what was represented in the software that they were using and in the reporting that they were using. So this really was just a tool to pull in the information from the portfolio management tools that they had at RBC, and then to produce something that was really helping her tailor her message to her clients and showing how their portfolios were positioned, what changes that they are recommending making, and just their overlook or overview on the markets.
And so with that in mind, you ended up joining Creases in a product role. How does that jump work out? Because it's not a conventional one by far. Like, most people don't go from wealth management to a product role with like technical solutions. And I think Creases was a software company, right? That's in the wealth management space.
Yeah. So they focus on portfolio management and client relationship management software for investment advisors. So I had that side from the investment advisory business. And then there was a bit of a gap there because once they closed down RBC Dominion Securities, the international group, I took off some time in between and then just spent all of my time doing education on software development. So just going through tons and tons of tutorials and all these projects to learn more about the software side of the business.
Was that like you preemptively decided that, okay, I'm kind of done with this wealth management side, where the kind of role that you were doing before, and you just wanted to go fully into the product side?
Yeah, exactly. Like after realizing the connection between liking to build those small products within these different jobs, I realized that that's what I liked a lot more than the actual investment management or wealth management side of the business. So I said, that's great, but I need to, one, understand how things work if I want to build a better tool for advisors, and two, I just need to have a better proficiency with software development in general. Like the last time I had done real software development was when I was really young, making websites with pure, like just basic HTML, like the most basic web pages back in, late 1990s kind of thing. So I know I had to actually educate myself on how things work now, and just get a better idea of how software products are managed to be able to go more in that direction. It all really came from wealth management business, knowing that there could be much better solutions for advisors to run their business. Creases was a good option because, one, it gave me the opportunity to go work for a software company. Two, it was somewhere where I could actually get into a product role because they focus on the end user, which was what I previously did in my jobs. So it was the way that I could transition over more into the software world and then learn more about how the data flow worked from the back office through to the actual portfolio management software, to get a lay of the land of how things work behind the scenes, so that I could set myself up for in the future doing something that was more advisor focused in software.
And like when you tell me the story, like, I find a lot of stories too where in hindsight, it just makes empirical sense. And of course, someone who was an end user would have a better understanding of the product. And so it sometimes feel like, at least when I was trying to get into the investment world too, it felt like things would make sense because I was like, oh, well, I was an accountant, so I know how to read financial statements. I built the financial statements, and then I was a consultant, so I fixed all the operational problems. So yeah, it makes kind of sense that I should be an investor that can analyze these companies, and I'll actually know how all the back end stuff works. But the industry sometimes has a different opinion where they go, no, we just like people from investment banking, although when you actually examine the work, sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. And I think that might persist in the product role too, where people might go, but you're not an engineer. How would you know about the product?
Yeah, I think in a different software company, there's no way that I would have gotten into a product role or within a product group in an organization, just because they look for things that are much more specific. They want to see things that you've built. They want to see more tangible things. They want to know what your process is for prioritizing different features, for doing user research. Whereas this company was just so deep in, one target market, very defined, high net worth investment advisors at big banks. Like they had half of the big 6 banks as their clients. So it was one where they faced a challenge of getting product people up to speed with what their end users want in a very, very complicated industry for someone just jumping in out of nowhere. So for them, it makes sense to kind of have people that have at least worked at a bank or within some kind of wealth management role before.
Yeah, like that sounds similar to how one of my earlier guests, he was a tax manager, and then he ended up becoming a product manager for, I think, Shopify, by building out the end kind of tax products for the businesses, because he came from the tax side. And so there just seemed to be like a way to build that up. But it seems, how did you learn the technical side though? Like, what was your process of, maybe like whether it was brushing up on code or even just learning the basic kind of wireframing techniques that product managers need to know and all that?
Yeah, there was the first part was a lot of self-learning. Like I always like to learn things on the side of my own anyway. That was always part of what I've done kind of historically. So I had gotten subscriptions at the time. I used Team Treehouse as a place to go and start learning different languages. They had a good breadth of information because they also had courses on everything from design to prototyping to the actual software development and everything there. So it gave me a good starting point to start building the foundational blocks. After that, I took a course with BrainStation on product management. So they do, I think it's once or twice a week in the evenings for, 8 or 12 weeks. And I did that to kind of get more an idea of how the process works for product management in general. And over time, it was just, trying to piece these things together to figure out how it works. But at the same time, I started transitioning over to my most recent role, which was really kind of putting those things into practice together.
Okay. And so then you were learning all this stuff while you were working as a product guy at Creases. And then even when you moved over after Creases to Purpose Advisor Solutions, when you joined in another product capacity, you were continuously going through these courses and learning on your own?
Yeah, exactly. So the whole time, it was always required, because when I went from, the job at Creasis, where they were on a much older technology stack in general, I never got into any of the actual code or anything when I was there. I was just learning on the side and trying to play around with a few things on the side, making I made one pretty bad game right now. Back then, that was for just going through old Jeopardy clues and just being able to answer and kind of like build up a score from the historical database of Jeopardy clues. But the actual Creasis job itself was purely kind of like business analyst product type role. When I got it over to Purpose Advisor Solutions, it was a much more blank slate. So I just had to go and learn about the different technologies to understand how we were going to put something together that was going to actually add value to the advisors.
Mm-hmm. And for context, I think Creasis right now is something like a 150-person company. It's relatively sizable. I think it's like a mid-sized company now. Was it around that big as well? Like when you first joined, 100 plus people?
Yeah, I think it was between 150 or 200 people when we were there. They had they've been around for a long time. I think since the 80s was when Remy Terrier, who's the founder of that company. I think he was first building small solutions for National Bank, and then just grew it into this really solid company that's been operating for decades now.
And Purpose was a much smaller company compared to that, right?
Yeah, I think Purpose grew a lot even in the time that I was there. They started being, ETF company. Som built Claymore that got sold to I think BlackRock, and then he went off and did Purpose, another ETF company. And I think his vision was always to build something that was more broadly like a digital banking services across all different verticals of banking. The first one that he did was obviously the kind of like the production asset management side, where he did ETFs, and then they started to acquire some smaller asset managers that were more active. And then from there, they did a couple different acquisitions. So for lending, they bought Thinking Capital. they acquired a company called REO that's doing like digital banking services. And then for the wealth management vertical, they actually created their own subdivision or other company called Purpose Advisor Solutions.
Oh, okay.
So I was brought on at the beginning of that.
Oh, okay. So then it was a branch off of the main Purpose kind of umbrella, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right. So he had brought on a gentleman named Warren at the time to lead the company as a CEO, and then it was a very, I think, open kind of playing field. But the idea was to capitalize on the trend that was very defined in the U.S., the registered investment advisor trend that's been going for years, where it's a way more fragmented market. But the investment advisors they have a lot of options where they can go and be independent and be more in control of their overall business and revenue. Whereas in Canada, you have the 6 banks that have a lot of the advisors. There's some big wealth management companies, but a lot of the models for those advisors are one where they get paid based on all of the revenue that they bring in. And then it gets split into a grid where effectively they get around 50% of the revenues that they bring in to run their business. So over time, the banks have been more trying to cut costs and have taken that grid so that the advisors are getting paid less and less over time. So part of the idea of building Purpose Advisor Solutions was that we're going to convert some of these advisors over and give them an option to be able to actually go independent, run their business, have more control over their overall operations.
Oh, okay. Wow. And like people have got to have heard of Somsay's Purpose like investments. I feel like there's advertisements everywhere about like the ETF solutions that are available, and like the Purpose investment ETFs everywhere. Like I see it all the time on like different kind of ads. Even like, I think I've even seen it like in airports and stuff as well. And when you're in it, it seems like you're in this new branch, you're building it out, and so it seems like it's closer to like what you want to do. It's closer to like the wealth management space, closer to helping advisors. Why did you end up choosing to leave though after like spending like 2.5 years there?
Yeah, it's funny because how I actually got in there in the first place, I actually left Creasis because I wanted to go and start building tools for advisors. So I lined up a couple jobs to build these like smaller tech solutions for investment advisors.
Or like a consulting kind of role, like you want to just go and help other companies.
Yeah, just like advisors. So there's a couple advisors that I worked with before that I went and built out this tool for them that was their own kind of like custom software. So I lined up a couple jobs and said, okay, well I can actually make money doing something else. So I'm going to go. I left Creasis. And it was kind of serendipitous that the old former CEO of Purpose Advisor Solutions, when he came in, was just looking up people in general that had worked on advisor desktops or advisor software. So I was working for Creasis and said, okay, well I'll try to bring this guy in and maybe he can help kind of build out this advisor desktop. So that's how I got into Purpose originally, and then I was there for better part of three years, and I think. There's a couple different things, but one was I think there was always this urge to be in charge of my own destiny. Not like for any old job, right? Most positions where you are when you're working for somebody else, your range of outcomes is somewhat limited based on other people's decisions, what other people think about you, what other people are willing to give you in terms of like opportunity. And I had a great opportunity there, like Sam and everything was really, really, really good. He was trying to grow everybody, he gave people opportunities, but there was just something in me that always wanted to go and just do something on my own to fully be in charge of my own destiny. And, if I failed, then I have nobody to blame but myself. And if I succeed, then, great. But just wanted to really kind of be off on something on my own.
Wow. And it seems like I'll take it back to the first maybe big pivot where you kind of had that realization from your role in finance that maybe product is where I want to go, maybe like building solutions is like what actually I enjoy more of. Like did you have an introspective process that you used to help make that decision? Because it's not a easy decision to just leave a field that you were spending like 5 years at and building a certain kind of skill to learn something new and transition to a completely different field.
I think I don't think that there was anything specific that I kind of did to come to that conclusion. I think I was at the time listening to a lot more than we've talked about, listening to the same types of blogs and like Tim Ferriss and some of these other more entrepreneurial blogs. So there's always like an urge to do something entrepreneurial. And I knew that being in the actual wealth business, to be, a wealth manager or an investment advisor, it would never, it just wouldn't be right for me, because there were all of these frustrations with the tools and everything to run your business that you just can't get around being within like a big bank, or it's way harder to do. Mm-hmm. So, the obvious thing for me was to kind of transition more to something that was software and product focused, because, I was able to actually build those tools or those solutions to be able to, run, in this case, like advisor business mm-hmm. more effectively.
Mm-hmm. And as you transitioned and you started working and doing the things you more so enjoyed, building the tools, building the solutions in these product capacities, you're still spending more time though, like building the skill inside an organization. Did it ever feel like sometimes like harder to make the jump? Like when you're at the time when you're about to like leave Purpose Advisors, like did it feel like it was hard to jump then than it was to like leave at like when you're at Creases?
Oh yeah, I mean definitely it was way different scenario. I think in general I couldn't have asked for a much better situation to be in. I was building the type of thing that I wanted to build. We had resources to do it. We had funding with Purpose. I had ownership in the company, so there's a lot of like really positives there. But I can't really articulate it much more than saying that there was something inside me that said you got to go and do something on your own and just tackle it and, mm-hmm. and go for it.
And that gut feeling, I definitely, like, I can definitely relate, where it's like, yeah, like you feel it, it's hard to articulate it, and sometimes it's like when you do a pro and con list, and there could be like 20 cons and there could be like 30 pros, but usually there's just 1 point out of all that just makes all the difference, that practically makes you go, yeah, I don't really care about all the other like 49 points. It's just this 1 point is going to make all the difference, and so I'm just going to go with that. And some people say that's the point of a pro and con list, not to really look at what's good and bad, but just to figure out what that really like 1 point that actually matters, makes all the difference is. But even then, I find it's hard when you're in the moment to actually follow your gut sometimes, like, because sometimes it's like the rational part of you goes like, oh god, that's so irrational, like what about all these things are going to happen, like how is that like for you? Like what was that conversation like internally?
Yeah, no, I think it just, I don't even remember exactly what was the moment that I decided that I was going to make the move. But at one point, I was discussing with my wife and was saying, okay, like, do I have enough money saved up to be able to go and kind of pursue something on my own for a while? Are we going to be okay? Like, are our expenses going to be covered? Do we have enough buffer with income and everything? And we said, you know what, we should be able to do it. So it's really just up to me. Like, is it the right time for me? And I think, every year that passes, you kind of see another number go up on your age, and you say, wow, this timeline feels like it's getting shorter. It's still relatively young, but no time like the present.
Yeah, no, I say, like, there's some podcast guests that I interview who are definitely like much older. They're in like their 40s, or I think I've even had people in their 50s, where they reference how people around them, it's sometimes they'll talk about how it's too late. Like, now I feel like I should have made a jump earlier, but I can't do that now because I feel like it's too late. But even then, there's some people who, like some older friends I have, where they'll be in their 30s and they'll go, I think it's kind of over now. Like, I can't make the jump now. But I don't know, what's your perspective on that? Like you have a family and everything, you made a jump while having a family. It's not like it's a different situation than like the 22-year-old who says, I'll make a jump because what do I have to lose? what's your perspective on people, choosing to make a jump, even having a family and having all these responsibilities?
Yeah, I think it really depends on your like individual situation and what kind of your cash flow needs are going to be. I think if you have cash flow needs, then should be a lot more focused early on and doing something that you're bootstrapping, you're able to kind of self fund and then take the jump. Like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can work a lot on the side and get something off the ground and then go from there. I think like age wise, they've shown many times that there's way more successful founders that are more like 40 and up, rather like first time founders than in their 20s or early 30s. And I think part of that is because when you look at a lot of different startups that come up, or you see different startup competitions from something like a university student, you'll see all these things around textbooks or sharing like dating apps or just stuff that's really focused on their universe, which is still so limited. It's a lot harder to go out and have some kind of perspective or some kind of view on something without having actually experienced working in an industry. And that means not, just working in the same job for 10 years, but it's, jumping around a little bit and getting some different sides of the business. And in my case, it was, doing both the technology side and the actual practical, like wealth management side, which then kind of gives you another perspective on things. So, I think for everybody, it's unique to them, and making the jump in terms of like family is really just looking at the financial situation and saying, is this okay? Are we going to be fine if I'm not taking money in for X number of months? And came to that decision, then it should be okay to go.
And that the ability to look at it from like the cash flow perspective, it's very. Speaking of like your wealth management background, always thinking about the cash flow, which is very important. Definitely can't speak lightly about that. But given that, have you like some of my friends approach me as like, is there a timeline? Like, is there an end date for what I do where after X amount of years I just can't do it anymore? And my perspective on that's been constantly shifting. I'd be curious to hear about yours. Did you like go on this journey like giving yourself like an end date or kind of a set parameter like when you will decide to like quote unquote like quit or like stop this project?
Yeah, I think my end date would have already passed by now if I'm like being honest in terms of getting something out there. So it definitely changed. I think in this process, the first 2.5, 3 months almost was just iterating different ideas and prototyping things and talking to people and then coming to something that seemed a lot more realistic and made more sense. So I really only got started in earnest in this and towards the end of December and developing this version. So I think it's been about two months, and I'm hoping to get out the first version at the beginning of April. So I think it's still like a realistic timeline. But in terms of giving myself a hard date, I think the way that I think about it is that I've proven before that I have marketable skills that I can use and make money doing these types of things, whether it's in wealth management or technology or working with investment advisors to help them do more things on their processes or build software for advisors. So the way that I think about it is there's kind of like a timeline to put all of my focus behind this more long shot application that I'm building. And then if things are not being very promising after a certain amount of time, then I would just switch over to things that are more practical, just bringing in more money and using that to kind of keep funding, keep bootstrapping. And then, if see where I need to kind of pivot the product to get more traction, but still just getting the first version out is the focus number one.
Mm-hmm. And how would you describe the first like 5-6 months of being on this journey?
Yeah, I think if I recommend anything to anyone, it would be find someone to do it with at the beginning, work on the side, split it 50-50 to start, and then kind of go from there. It's a lot more difficult, especially if you're someone that analyzes things a lot, to go off on your own and start a business. Yeah, it's just you go through a lot of ups and downs and doubt in terms of am I building the right thing, and you want the immediate payoff of knowing am I making the right decision on this thing? Is this the right direction to go? And there's no one answer, and there's no way to go and validate that without talking to a lot of people and kind of putting the work in. So there's a lot of this like delayed gratification and not knowing whether or not you're making the right decisions for quite a while at a time sometimes.
Yeah, so I definitely struggled with that earlier, and I still struggle with it too. I think because like you said, you just don't know that actually there is an answer, like, but you kind of want an answer, and sometimes you get some kind of feedback, and then the overanalyzer in me goes, but is that enough feedback? Like, do I just go off of this? Do I try to get more? Or like this is so reminiscent of like even my days as an investor, where like my portfolio managers would give me feedback and say, Dan, like you're really digging into it quite deep. That's good, but at the same time, sometimes you gotta let it go. And sometimes I'll spend like 3 months researching one company, and because there's just so much information out there. And even now, as I constantly try different projects, like I'll try to put a limit on, okay, I'll only speak to 5 people, and after that 5 piece of data, like I'll see like, are they all different, or is there some kind of similarity, and just make a decision after that. So I'll try to like force myself to put a limit. But yeah, it's definitely been a process to get, I think, mentally comfortable around the fact that there might never be like a true answer.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective of being someone that tends to way overanalyze things, one of the best things about I think my personality is that I never regret any like previous decisions. Anything that's happened in the past, I'm on looking in the future. So it's tough when you're overanalyzing things, but it's good that if you don't kind of look back too much on old decisions to regret them, look back to analyze, okay, but look back to regret. I never do that. So I can always kind of fall back on whenever I'm ready to make a decision, just saying, am I making the best decision based on the information that I have right now? And then if yes, then okay, well, make that decision. And it's normally never like too early decisions for me. So I can always fall back on, I made the best decision I feel like I could have made at that time with that info, and just kind of push forward and not regret anything that's happened based on those decisions that I've made.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think for me, that was definitely a learning process too, where it was getting comfortable with just the kind of pace that I need in formulating the decisions. And like you said, we're getting comfortable with, like I overanalyze, but for me to be comfortable enough to make a certain decision, I might just be the kind of person that needs to let this marinate and think about it maybe like for 6 months or something, like longer than other people. But once I actually decide on it, then I know that I'm the kind of person to just stick with it, and I won't be quitting on it. So then that's how I've been able to do the self-talk on, okay, yeah, that's fine. That's just how the process is. Although I think in the short term, it's very like upsetting when I go, shit, I could have decided to do this a year ago when I had the idea, but yeah, I'm doing it a year later. Do you ever beat yourself up about that?
No, never.
No,
never. It's kind of like on to the next decision. Kind of figure out, try to make best decision based on what's there, and then I've never. I can't even think about anything that I've really regret from decisions in the past.
No, that's true. Yeah, I can definitely agree there. Like truly regretting, nah, definitely not. Like I was talking to my dad, because he's been an entrepreneur for about like 15 years, and so catching up with him last week, and I was like, like it's hard right now, like, but definitely don't regret any of the decisions I've made. I think I've made all the right ones so far. A bit of confirmation bias, but I think I need that to live with all this as well.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned like you're a solo founder yourself, and you mentioned about how you tell people like, yeah, you should probably recruit someone and do it together. And I've had solo founders, people who are co-founders on my podcast, and people who are co-founders would talk about, oh, you should have co-founders, and people who are solo founders will also they will say like, yeah, it's nice to have co-founders, but there are also perks of being a solo founder. Like for you, what are some times when you like the fact that you are a solo founder, and sometimes when you go, oh yeah, I kind of wish I had a co-founder?
Yeah, I think it's nice. It would be nice to have someone else to just be in the trenches with, in terms of kind of pushing through. And then if you're doing something on your own, it's always that much harder to deal with any kind of ups or downs because, it's good that you're ultimately accountable and you're in charge of your own destiny, but it also means that you're doing a lot of different things. There's a lot of different parts of this, the business that I'm doing personally right now, which would be good to spread over more people. And just, I don't know, I think anytime that you're working by yourself entirely compared to working with other people, it's a lot nicer to be working with other people.
Mm-hmm. How do you deal with the ups and downs?
Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of been going on runs if I'm like really stressed out about something. But the first couple of months tough. Just getting to the right. The problem has always been kind of defined in what I've been trying to solve, and it's really this kind of like millennial age, getting better budgeting, financial planning. I think there's a lot of services out there. People still practically have a lot of issues with just managing their money overall and making good decisions with money. So the problem was always there. It was just how exactly to make the solution, and am I going in the right direction? Because there's a lot of different incarnations of solving this problem that involve more like higher touch, like lower touch, like actually connecting people with planners and advisors with providing them in-house, with making it more of like a self-serve solution. And there's a lot of different changes along the way where I put a lot of effort towards one solution and then just completely scrapped it and then started over again. So some of those things, it's rough when you're going through it, but I've just been trying to do some kind of exercise to move on past that one and then just go on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that this is my personal experiences. I try to solve it where I'll try to talk to friends about it and stuff, but I've also found that my friend groups have had to just kind of evolve just in nature of just going on this kind of path where it's just harder for my friends from like the professional service role that I'm from to be able to like understand or empathize with like the situation I'm in. And I've seen that as like a natural evolution, but at the same time I'm like, that was a little surprising. I just didn't expect it to be like that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's still has a similar. I don't think that the friend situation has changed too much because of that. I think there's been I've had good friends that have either like come or go from the city, which is probably like a bigger effect than the change to doing this, because my day-to-day life is still relatively the same when I leave WeWork and I go back home. It's that part of it is pretty similar to what it was before. I always was trying to play around and figure things out later at night. So now I'm just if I'm done working here and I want to get a little bit more work in, then I'll work on this at night. So yeah, it hasn't like my day-to-day life hasn't like changed too much outside.
Actually, on that point, like when you're building your own thing, I find I feel like, at least for me, there's a comparatively greater push to always feel like you're doing more, or like a desire to constantly be doing more work, and a bit of sometimes anxiety of like, should I be doing more work just because this is my project? Nothing's going to happen if I don't execute on it. And these kind of things sometimes happen at night when I'm no longer, working out of WeWork, like somewhere else. And how does that happen to you? And if it does, like, how do you how have you decided to like deal with it? Do you just pound through the work at night?
Yeah, no, I think I felt that a lot more when I was not doing it full time. Like when I was working at other jobs and had aspirations of doing things like this, then I'd feel like, I should be learning more on the side. I should be trying to experiment more in my off hours. But the time is so limited that it's hard to do anything meaningful. Now that I have full time during the days to kind of dig into all of this, I get actually like pretty tired by the time that I get home, and then just have normal like family time, and then maybe like later on at night after my kid's gone to bed, then maybe I'll kind of get back onto something and work a little bit more. But it depends on how I'm feeling more, and like energy levels more than just feeling stressed out about not doing something.
So you'll purposely still take time off and like rest and everything.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's the same thing on the weekends too, because it's I remember there was one of my previous employers. I went to the strategy coach, and they always recommended having one free day. So at least one day a week where you're not doing anything related to the work, because when you are an entrepreneur, you generally have like that pressure to always be working on something, and if you're never unplugging, then you just kind of eventually burn out. So I think that's helped me is like on the weekend normally have at least like one day where hanging out with the family and doing stuff that's not really related to work. More or less, at least like big blocks of time.
Mm-hmm. Have you felt like you've burned out any time during these past 6 months?
Yeah, I think before the first few months of like, because there was a lot for me being like a much more introverted person, the talking to like, all of the users and everything, and doing pretty much nonstop interviews, cold calls. I was doing a lot of cold calls to different financial planners, advisors, and then just setting up interviews with end users, and it was a lot of talking. And those are the days for me that are the most tiring. It's where I've been on the phone the entire day. I've been talking with people the entire day. So after months of that, and then not knowing, I think there was probably like even 2 months in where I had gone through a couple different versions, talked to so many people, and then at times felt still very, very confused about how the solution was going to solve the problem, and if I'm completely wrong. So there were some times there where it was getting really difficult. Now that it's more clear, at least you can kind of have like a normal cadence to like what my week looks like, and how I like plan out my days.
And like now you said that now you have kind of more of a clearer picture of the direction and how you're going to proceed. But when you were deciding to take the jump, there are definitely like a lot of players making noise in like the wealth management space. There's like the big guys like Wealthfront and Wealthsimple who are kind of leading the charge of like, we're gonna FinTech, and having like a nice big sign there. And it can seem like sometimes like a crowded space in that way. But when I find that when you have an idea and you want to create something, usually it's because like you see something that the other people might not see. Like from the big outside, like people might think, oh, they all look the same, but then there's like a nuance and there's like a weird niche that you want to target. For you, what was that when you decided to like go to jump? And how does that compare to like the vision, like what you see now?
Yeah, I think it has to do with a lot of the people that you mentioned. So, Wealthsimple came in. I remember seeing them from like the very early days and really liking what they were doing, because it's just something that made a lot of sense. Taking down the cost to give people a diversified portfolio and put a nice experience around it. So from early on, what that did is that the banks weren't really worried about it, because they just felt like, we're going to see how they do. And if they do well, then we'll just try to build something similar and then just, enable it for all of our, millions of customers. But what it did that was really important is that it really set this price. It put this line in the sand for portfolio construction. So now we're used to go to all these different financial planners or wealth managers to go and get a portfolio done for you, and you normally paid anywhere from 1 to 1.5% in fees on like an annual basis to them. They had at the same time, a lot of these advisors transitioned over to being fee based as opposed to like commission based and how they made money. And a lot of people, what they did was they either constructed portfolios or did third party fund manager selection and constructed appropriate portfolios for people based on their risk, but they were charging 1 to 1.5% for it. So what Wealthsimple did is that it kind of put this line in the sand at whatever it is, 35 basis points, and then told all these wealth managers, okay, well, you're gonna have to, if you want to charge 1.5%, you got to justify all this other value proposition that you're giving for charging so much more.
Sorry, I'm just gonna, for people who don't know what a basis point is 35 basis point is 0.35%. So yeah. 1% would be 100 basis points. just to clarify that for some people who are not in finance.
Yeah. I think the main thing that changed was that the whole wealth management industry, I think, has put a lot more focus behind goals-based wealth management. And what that means is that really getting the goals that people have and lining up the portfolios and different accounts that they're using to match up with that. But overall, the traditional banking industry is still pretty siloed in terms of, wealth managers within a bank don't have great access to, or any access to, like the banking side of things, what banking products you have, what your checking account and savings accounts are over there. So they're really not in a great position to give very, very holistic advice a lot of the time. These are like the Dominion Securities kind of advisors. But that's where they're trying to justify their value proposition, is giving you this more holistic wealth management, everything from financial planning to estate planning and insurance, and like they give you this whole picture in one. Where I think there was a gap there is that with a lot of these third-party services that have come up that let you connect people's bank accounts, so things that like Mint, the financial planning or financial budgeting app, worked on in early days. It allows you now to have access to at least more information about a person. And there was this kind of hypothesis that, for 80% of people that have relatively simple needs that are mostly unaddressed by these like higher net worth wealth managers, you can do a lot of really good work for giving people like best practices on budgeting, financial planning, and advice, just based on getting their picture together in one place. So that's a lot of what I tried to build the app around was, how do we make this experience for a person so that they can, one, see, high level of their budgeting and understand what money's coming in, where it's going every month, put together what their goals are, and then be able to recommend to them, like what you should be prioritizing with your money, which account types you should be using, and then be able to just let them do that on top of whatever existing services that they use. So really like bring in their whole picture together, whether at one bank or multiple banks are using different services. So I think just the difference for me when I was leaving there and starting something of my own, it was seeing that it was kind of like V1 of FinTechs happened, and a lot of these individual services have come out. But if you kind of go back down to the fundamentals of, what problems people have with their money, I think that and managing their finances, there's still tons and tons of room. It's just kind of like the next version of this, which a lot of people are going to be after also, but it's still not as crowded as, these more targeted approaches.
And do you feel in the past 6 months like you've gotten more conviction on that hypothesis?
Yeah, I think the problem is definitely there. Just making good financial decisions. I think everybody, when you have a decision of, whether or not I should buy a house or not, or, if should I be investing this money? If I have, these different goals, like should it be in a savings account? Should I be invested? A lot of these things where you go and then it's hard to get an easy answer because you normally have to put in all this work to explain to someone the full situation before you can get a really good personalized answer. So I think that, the problem is there to be able to help people make better decisions with their money. The question is really, can you make the solution simple and intuitive enough that really helps people without it being too onerous? Because it's a very complicated world just by nature.
Mm-hmm. And this is a pretty big problem that can impact a lot of people. Has it ever felt to you that the problem just feels like so big, and you're doing it as a solo founder too? So I'm just curious on whether just the grandiosity of the problem has sometimes ever kind of weighed on you. Of like, how am I going to actually solve this?
Yeah, I think the complexity of building the product and solving the problems for the end user, it is very like complicated, and there's a lot of just complexity in the problem. So I think that the way that I tried to address it was, one, by making it something that you can start with relatively limited inputs, and then you can kind of build up the personalized aspect of it over time. And the way that I've kind of been thinking about it in terms of providing that service to users or just getting something out there when it's a really complicated product to build is, can I build this, version one of this, something that I can get into the hands of people that I can either personally work with people or work with financial coaches or planners who would find value in giving this to their clients as well. And then just helping the first kind of cohort of people actually manage their money better using it, and then figure out how we can make this this product more and more easy to use, more and more automatic, without any kind of touch from the some kind of financial professional.
Mm-hmm. And in regards to this, the journey you've been going on as a full-time entrepreneur now, what's been something that's been very surprising to you in the journey so far? Because there's things where we can read about it in books, and we can read about Peter Thiel or what Tim Ferriss says, and we go, okay, yeah, I should expect that. And then for me, I'll still make the mistake, and I'm like, oh, that's what they were talking about. But it's not that surprising. But what are things that kind of surprise you in this journey so far? Where you said, wow.
I don't know if it's like a huge surprise, but confirmed was just how long it takes. It takes a really long time to in a very competitive market. So there's lots of different products and services being built now. It's way easier to build solutions for any kind of problem. So there's just so much more noise, so much more competition out there that it takes a while just to find the right kind of niche, the right kind of problem, and the right type of solution that addresses it to try to get to some kind of product market fit. It takes a long time to really prove that out.
Mm-hmm. And is that in reference to right now? I guess it's been about 5-6 months since you went full time into Moment. How does it compare to what you initially thought it would be? Did you initially think it would take maybe a month, but now it's taken 5 months? Or
no, I think getting to the real I felt like the start line was around the end of the year, so that's when I really kind of started. So I feel like that kind of first, a lot of the user discovery, a lot of the customer development type process, that it just takes a long time, and I thought that you'd be able to go through it quicker. But it's just it's just difficult to find the right people, to talk to the right people, to kind of synthesize the information, and it just takes a long time.
Mm-hmm. And are you kind of the main developer behind your product too, or I think you also outsourced some of it? Right?
Yeah. So since we started this, I used some outsourced development, especially to get kind of some of the core infrastructure off the ground. And I've done enough work on my own in software development that now I've kind of taken over a lot of it, because a lot of the different financial planning aspects of it, and just the structure of how it works in terms of the financial planning side of it. It's actually kind of been easier for me to step in and do the work rather than describe the entire thing. Give it to developers, make sure that they do it, go back and check the code, make sure they do it right. It's kind of crossed over to where they've done a lot of the fundamental architecture of it. And for me to kind of build in more of the business logic part of it, it's easier for me to go in and do it.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say motivates you to constantly build this out and go through the long process of anything?
Yeah, I think on the actual problem side, the just that it's increasingly there's lots of solutions out there that address different parts of managing your money. Yet we still find so many people that have a really tough time either getting started or just making sense of their finances. And I think that there's still lots of opportunity to solve those problems for people that, if there's no good solution out there, it means that they go to, could be either a branch, or it could be someone else that's, in a specific product vertical that almost pushes a specific type of product on you, or doesn't have the right incentive in terms of giving that end client the best service. So for me, it's just been, I think that there's a better way to solve this problem for the end user and the end client, and just wanting to build it, wanting it to be out there and kind of contribute towards it.
Do you have a practice of like celebrating like small wins to help like motivate you continuously?
No, I don't think so. Not really. I probably should more. From like the motivation point of view, or just like
yeah, kind of. Just I guess in a way of getting feedback on like why you're doing all this. So like for example, like for me, as I've been building out the podcast, building out the whole platform, like whenever a listener or someone who reads my essays like writes in and talks about how this was valuable or to like keep on producing good content, that works as like a motivator for me. Like it's like those like small wins, or like kind of like a reminder of like, oh yeah, I know why. Like reminds me of why I'm doing this, so I can kind of continue to push through on the journey.
Yeah, I think not specifically, but I think kind of just naturally within days, I kind of will have different moments where I've tackled something, or I've kind of solved some kind of problem that I didn't know if I'd be able to do on my own or without more help from other people. So a lot of those things I kind of celebrate. But for me, I think the first real milestone will be just getting V1, getting the first people using it is going to be the real thing that is the first big win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you ever feel tired? I know, like I think that was like the conversation I had with you yesterday, where I just told you, oh, I just feel so tired.
yeah, I think so. Definitely comes up, and it comes in waves. But I just try to when it comes up, I just try to unplug a little bit.
Yeah,
it's a bit harder in the winter, but just do something to distract and then come back to it. But it hasn't been long enough that I feel like that I'm tired from just trying to pursue this, because I feel more like there's just this motivation to like keep pushing through to actually getting to launch date, and whatever I have to do to push through and get there, like whether or not it becomes a success or it doesn't become a success, it doesn't, I can't, like that first target is the launch date, and there's nothing that's going to stop me from being motivated until we get through there.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we've actually talked about your age. How old are you right now?
33.
Okay. And so if we reflect back to, let's say, your 20-year-old self, 13 years ago, that's like third year university, I think. So third year in Carleton, Miguel. If that Miguel were to look at you right now, what do you think his emotional reaction would be to what you're doing?
I think he probably would have said about time to have like done something on my own. I think there's definitely benefit to knowing an industry and working towards it. But I think that with a lot of the different methods out there, especially for like customer development, kind of like the Steve Blank framework for just doing value proposition and business model canvas and finding the right problem and getting the customer gains, the pains, and kind of just laying that stuff out there. I mean, there are systems out there to, whether or not you have deep industry knowledge, to be able to solve a problem for someone, and to be able to do it based on the resources that are out there. So I think it probably would have tried to do something on my own, maybe like 5 years sooner.
And so then, if you were to give that 20-year-old advice, would it be to start things sooner?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just take advantage of what's out there. There's like infinite amount of different resources to learn from. You just need to find out how to kind of put a couple of them together to solve a problem in a creative way. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it can seem like there's all the problems are being addressed by someone, but every layer of new solutions normally means, or new products that go out there, there's normally like another layer of different problems that arise. Mm-hmm. So there's always going to be more opportunity out there. It's just I think starting earlier, better using the resources that are out there, and being as practical as possible as early as possible, is what I would try to do.
What do you think stopped you from starting earlier?
I think probably just not one. I was always being in the wealth management industry. I was going down that path. Like it wasn't obvious to me how to solve a problem for like an investment advisor being on my own. And then after I kind of went to Croesus, then I at least was able to say, okay, well, here's a way that I can do something for these advisors. When I left there and kind of got a couple of contracts on the side. So I kind of kept going down that path. And then, the opportunity with Purpose came up right after, which was like a really kind of a way to accelerate it. So I kind of went down that path, but it just wasn't with jumping with both feet. It was kind of like dipping my toes in the water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that's a tricky one. Whether you, there's another thing like the overanalyzer. Like, when do you know to jump in with both feet?
Yeah, I think it also depends on your personality too, yeah. Right? Like some people, one of the things that we had an HR person come to me with in terms of knowing for employees, like knowing their motivations is really important. And they had this wheel that kind of said, do people care more about recognition, or is it compensation, or is it, knowing that they have like expertise over a domain or whatever. But there was this wheel that they had, and some people, they just like to be the boss of what they do, know what they know their job, do it really well, clock in, clock out, and then are way more interested in other things on the side. And then that's perfect for them. They should continue to do that. But if you're the type of person, I think that that has like a real entrepreneurial aspiration, then I feel like you're going to be unhappy no matter what you do that's not pursuing it. It's just figuring out, okay, if I try, version 1 of doing this and it doesn't work, how do I get to version 2 or version 3 without kind of just falling back into your previous path.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's probably a good place to end our chat today. But like before we kind of sign off, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you kind of wanted to talk about or kind of wanted to share?
No, not really. I think we covered a few things there.
Yeah. And when can people then expect to, like, if they're interested in like using Moment to help their own financial planning, like when can they expect to see the app go live, and where should they find it?
Yeah, so you can go to momentfinancial.com. You can sign up for the wait list that's on there right now. So we have a lot of signups already. And if you're interested in it, or you're kind of, your interest is piqued more also from, hey, there's a problem that I'm really passionate about, because I've come across a lot of people that are passionate in solving these personal finance issues for themselves and for other people. Definitely don't hesitate to get in touch. Find me on LinkedIn. It's Miguel Fernando, and yeah, we can get together and chat, or see if there's some kind of fit or partnership or something like that too.
Awesome. All right, my friend. Thanks for coming on the podcast and making this conversation extremely fun and enjoyable.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. All right. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope the story was inspiring to you. Hopefully it also helped you expand your perspectives. Hopefully it also made you question the default path that you might have been going on, or the default beliefs you might have had. And maybe now it'll make you even think about doing something about it, doing something different, maybe challenging yourself, being courageous. Who knows? But regardless, I'm really happy that you took some time out of your day to listen to this fantastic story with my guest. And if you would like to somehow, in some way, contribute and help support the podcast, and maybe even just be part of the community that I'm trying to build with the greater OMD Ventures platform, really think about being a stakeholder in the platform. And the quick way to do that is to go to my website, oldmandan.com, and go to the stakeholders page. I believe it's oldmandan.com/stakeholder. And the link is also down below. And that's how you can figure out how you can subscribe, follow to get more updates on the free content, but at the same time also donate donate by actually just buying me a coffee. That's just how I put it. And you can buy me a coffee a month, coffee a week, or coffee every day of the year. And think about it as the way that, if you wanted to chat with me, you might just bring me out for coffee and buy me a coffee. Or if you wanted to bring one of my guests out to chat, you might buy them a coffee. So just think of it as I'm the service that's doing that for you. So you can just pay me in coffees. Don't worry, everything will still be free. It would just really help if you would like to show your support this way, so that I can use the coffee money to buy myself actual coffees, and also to buy my guests actual coffees, and use the leftover money to actually grow the platform, as well as even keep it operationally alive as well, because all this isn't really free, and it does take a lot of time to build it as well as operate it and hopefully grow it further. So your support would be amazing if you would like to contribute. And so yeah, just check out the website, go to the stakeholders page, and read the different kind of benefits you might even get as a stakeholder. All right, thank you.